So this will be a recording of a commentary on about why Unreal, the Unreal 4 engine is used within the industry, comparing it to other software, evaluating Unreal 4, and why it is used, why I used it in the development of my game, and why it is used in development of other games. The pursuit and innovation to my game, as well as the mechanics and blueprint system of game. First of all, we're going to be talking about Unreal 4 in the industry. It is used in the industry mostly because it is free to use, it is easy to understand in the terms of its UI, as it is very easily laid out. All of the UI is very clear, is all scalable, so you don't have to deal with small icons or icons that are too big or parts of the UI that are too cluttered, and is fully customizable, so it can all be altered and changed in any you wish. It uses C++, which is one of the major programming languages and is very popular within the gaming industry. It's very frequently used in gaming in general, and has quite the history. It has the capability to handle high resolution textures, which means that it is apt for photorealism and for making games that have got that are very demanding in the terms of processing power, which is what a lot of modern day game developers want. They want things to be photorealistic, to look good, to have realistic reflections and lighting. One of the major things that we're talking about is the commission that Epic Games takes, which is one of the reasons why the industry uses it as a positive. They only take 5% of revenue after £3,000 pounds/dollars per quarter. The downside to this is that 5% commission is undesirable for very large companies like EA, where it would be cheaper not even cheaper, but cost them less overall to produce their own engine and then from there produce their own games, meaning that they get around the commission rather than having to pay Epic Games for a commission. Also, the other really important downside is Unreal games have a tendency to be stable in performance. Now, this is an issue that's been around since Unreal 3 really, where certain lighting effects or two physics objects, or effects can really break the engine and cause it to hard crash, or corrupt data. This can be a huge problem if you're working on a project with a large company, because if your game corrupts itself due to a model or file that somebody's produced, then you can very easily end up with a lot of dead time. Also, on the terms of actual, it is unstable on machines, due to the fact that even if you don't use all of the photorealistic things, they kind of just linger. It's not very well optimized, is the best way of putting it. And Unreal 4 engine games do have to take more dedication to optimization than just other games. Now, we're going to compare Unity to Unreal, just for the sake that it is the closest thing to Unreal. Unity is not free if you're a company. It is $35 per month if you make under a certain amount. To that, I believe 200,000. I believe it is, though this can change. Or you can pay 25 USD dollars per month and have no cap of how much money you can make. Unity does not have photorealistic capabilities built into it. Now, there are some very good-looking Unity games, but most of them use third-party plugins or have third-party support. Now, this is something that Unreal has too, but Unreal has a much smaller community around it, especially for the indie development scene, compared to Unity, because Unity has been around long. And the next thing we're going to talk about is how Unity has, is more stable. It can be used. It has scalable stability. So if your project is a small-scale project, or is something that needs to be lightweight, such as Hearthstone, for example, then Unity can very easily make very lightweight, very small games, very little problems. You don't have to do massive workarounds to avoid things. Now, something that I failed to note on the presentation is both Unity and Unreal have their own stores, and there are a lot of free assets available. Both, and currently, I believe that Unreal is winning out. On the better, higher quality assets, as even though Unity has more, and there are some very high quality assets that are very expensive. Well, sometimes if you're lucky, you can get them for free through Unity. But Unreal, the owners of Unreal, Epic Games, have been producing workshop updates in a manner where they produce a scene or a collection of assets as a pack and then release them onto the store for free. They've been doing this for just a year, and their assets are very high quality. They are made to an extremely high quality, and this means that even for free, just with Unreal, you're getting a huge backlog of workshop materials that wouldn't be available to you if you just used Unity for free. These are, of course, large files, and they will increase the size of your games, but they are very high quality. And combine that with how Unreal has support for people who don't make games but make things for Unreal and release those onto the store, much like Unity has as well. They have got the more impressive, better workshop. They really, with the content updates for the workshop, they have pushed out these really detailed, high quality environments, which honestly they blow your mind as an indie game developer, because it's something that you can use and work with that you wouldn't usually have access to. Now we're going to talk about what I used in my game, and these are the key things apart from these are the tools and the decisions that I had to make. So one of the things that I decided to use from the beginning was the Destructible Mesh plugin. Now, the Destructible Mesh plugin allows you to take a mesh and then convert it into basically tiny little chunks that you can destroy. Well, when you shoot it, it collapses and you can turn it into a physics object. Now, I really like the idea of, talk about this in inspiration, but basically glass shattering effects from things like old Flash games like Plasma Burst and Plasma Burst 2, and I thought, well, why don't I just make a glass target that breaks and it flies around the place like and then I thought, well, I can take that one step further. What if I make sure the target doesn't have any gravity, so it floats around and it's neon? And then I found the Destructible Mesh plugin through research, and that led me to using it. My actors levels and blueprints, I have to use these. I used the leveling system to produce my levels. I use the blueprint system instead of coding in C# because I just can't code in C#. Well, C++, it's not a C# guy. C++, I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at it. And when it came down to it, the only other system I used in Unreal was the material system for producing textures. And again, you sort of have to use this if you're in Unreal. I use atmospheric fog, particular, and global lighting effects to produce the lighting effects you've seen in my game. That blackened top is caused by overexposure, basically. And I set the exposure color to darker so that when it hits it, instead of turning white, it turns black. And then I applied a smaller light to the character, and then a spotlight to the character with a long range to give it a much better overall feel. I tried and experimented with global lighting effects with this, but it just ended up being very And with the added of the neon targets, it really made them stand out opposed to the background. And then I was having problems working with a timer, and I wanted to include a way of scoring, but I didn't want to have to... Well, I wanted to include a way of scoring and adding time, but I didn't want to just flat out make it a failure condition. So I made it so it counted down the score constantly. I believe I decided on like 5 units a second, or 3 or something. Either 5 or 3. 5 score a second units while you're not doing anything. And in the future, I should have really tied that to a failure condition, but I just didn't think of it at the time. And I then gave the birds, which are targets, and the regular targets, I made a function inside the game mode that made it so it added points up and counted them down simultaneously. And this number worked really well. And later on, it would go on to be used in making the scoreboard. And the scoreboard went okay. We'll talk about that. So next of all, we have the inspiration. So Unreal Tournament. Unreal Tournament, Unreal Tournament 3, and Quake. These are games I played in my childhood, and I really wanted to replicate that feel of floatiness and movement, and I tried. But when I made the character faster than it was, it felt too floaty. Not only did it feel too floaty, but then jumping and accurate jumping became very hard. Even with I turned air movement very high. I think it ended up like 75% higher than it would have been usually on the base game. And it worked out to my favour. And we've already discussed like flash games like Plasma Burst and stuff, where I saw the effects they took, and then the biggest innovation I've really done for is instead of having your standard shooting range, it's all randomly generated from a set of an array. So I have an array that contains about 5 or 6 different tiles, I think, at the moment. That could be expanded to as many as you wanted, infinite numbers. And then I have it generate 10 or so tiles, and it will always generate correctly because of the way I have it set up. Though there is a possibility of overlap, which is a problem, but it wasn't a huge problem due to the way I design the tiles, and you can always just reset. It is a realistic problem where if I was going to produce this into a proper game, I would make it test for if it was overlapping, and if it was overlapping, then generate a different part and cycle through a parts list at that point, where it was trying to find a part that fit without overlapping, which is a hard task to do, and I didn't have the time to really explore that. Last of all, we want to do the development of the mechanics. So the adjustments in movement made so to make it feel more like the guns and weapons are just line tracers that use various line tracers that either apply damage or apply radial force on contact, or in the case, apply several line tracers that do damage. I didn't include ammunition, mostly just because I found a way to track it by just basically having a unit countdown and having 3 separate values, but it didn't add anything to the game other than made it so you also had to dive for ammunition at the same time of get through the level as quickly as possible to maintain your high score, and I felt like that didn't really fit well the mechanics of trying to go through the level as fast as possible, because then you only reserve your shooting for when you can only see or when you can hit a target, instead of like trying to fire and hit it and missing and hitting and missing and hitting and missing. The tile generation randomization is a lot less randomized than you would think. So every level starts in the same place, every level ends in a different place but with the same tile, which is the ending tile. Between there, it can be any set of generation of the tiles selected in the array. Those tiles were designed in a manner so there would be a minimum level of overlap. I have one left turn, one right turn, and several tiles that go up and down. If it goes, the one that always goes to the right will always go up and to the right. The one that goes to the left will always go down to the left. This means that you never get a super high spiral stairs of. You won't get a spiral of left, 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 and then you'll always go. You won't go left, 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 and then hit a wall. You go left and down, and left and down, and left and down, and by that point you're underneath the tile you were just under. And that's good, that's very good. The only issue when it starts to arise is you go left, then right, then left, then right. And then sometimes you end up with some very minor clipping on walls, which you wouldn't notice. Maybe you will notice, I don't know. Or if... Well, it shouldn't clip, is what I'm trying to say, but sometimes it does, and I didn't figure out what tile was causing it. But if I did figure out what tile was causing it, then I would correct it, because that's an issue. Of course it's an issue. The leaderboard, I actually don't know if the leaderboard is fully functioning. I think it is, but I don't know if it creates a save properly. It should create the save, but when in playtesting, before it was compiled completely, because I haven't tested it while it was compiled yet, I couldn't get it to save a score, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't saving a score. But it will display the score perfectly fine, and I hadn't implemented a system to name yet, so that was why it wasn't displaying. It was just displaying name. But I don't understand why it wouldn't display this is the second score, even though I could force it to by using commands, basically by routing a keyboard shortcut to create another one. I can do that, but I wouldn't get it to save, and I would like, if I was going to remake this, I would definitely do more research into the leaderboard and how it's created and the save states of Unreal so that I can properly make it. And I believe that's the end. So I hope that I covered all my topics, and I hope I did it in a great enough detail that you're happy with me. Thank you. Bye.